All right, projects. Great. Great topic for a product conference, isn't it? So today, as Thomas mentioned, I really want to talk to you about how you can actually transform a project company working in projects into a product company. And before we get started, I actually have to make an important distinction. I think I don't really have to explain to the crowd what the difference between a project and a product is, but there's like one super important distinction when you talk about B2B SaaS. Because when I talk about a project, what I actually mean is that you have one code base per customer. That is really important to keep in mind while I talk about project and product in a minute. And when I talk about a product, what I actually mean is that you have one code base for everyone, right? So just like a small addition, I didn't want to give you like the Wikipedia explanation here, but this is like super important to remember. So, why do you want to be a product company? I mean, there's a lot of product people in the room, right? So why do you want to be a product company? Oh, yes. Oh, that was awesome. Scalability, of course. Projects don't really scale, but product does. And what I want to talk to you about today, or what I actually want to kind of tell you, it's going to be like kind of a story thing, is 3 stories to illustrate 8 challenges that we kind of identified when working with companies transitioning from project to product. So let's start with the first one. But before that, I actually want to give you some context about the call, because after a while you might figure out, oh, he's just talking about the problem. And I will be talking a lot about the problem and the challenges attached to it. And the reason is Albert Einstein. Because if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to think about the problem. Chris, could we maybe exchange the clicker? I think that is low on battery. So let's talk about the beginning and something that we call project stacking. So, I think 6 or 7 years ago, I was working with a product team or in a product team, and we were building a B2B to C solution. I think if you want to know, go to the Product Masterclass stand and talk to Susanne. Where's Susanne? Oh, there, perfect. And while we were developing it, like one thing I always said is like, it's our baby. It's our baby. And I actually got like a baseball from the team where it says like, it's our baby on it. And as you can see from the picture, that's not it, because I kind of lost it. I really don't know what it is, where it is with it, which is a shame, right? But the one thing that people always tell, and I think Ash will talk about that a little later as well, fall in love with the problem, not the solution, right? But to be honest, if you build something and you pour all your heart in it, it's really hard to not fall in love with your product, right? And so if you start like that, especially in the B2B space, in the beginning you often don't have a lot of customers. So you talk maybe to one customer, maybe co-develop like the first version of the product with customer 1, and it's this beautiful baby. So you send it out to the customer, works exactly as intended for them, and then you keep thinking, maybe we can sell it another time, right? Maybe sales is thinking that, the founders, product is thinking that. But the issue is that the second customer, he loves the baby, beautiful baby, right? But they just want something a little different. For instance, like a third eye. And you think, yeah, that's not ideal, but I mean, it's not too bad, is it? I mean, third eye, yeah, we can do that, right? Maybe they talk to engineering and say, can we do a third eye? Yeah, we have done eyes before, we can do a third eye, right? And then the third customer comes along and says, love the baby, but I actually need a third arm. So that's what you do, third arm. Because we have done arms before, right? We can do a third arm. And then the fourth customer comes, and I think you already know where I'm going with this, and they say, love the arm, just on the other side. That wouldn't be a problem if you were doing pure projects. So if you had like separate code bases, not really a problem, doesn't scale that well, but also not really a problem. But if you do that for a while, your baby looks a bit like this. with the fourth customer because it's all in the same code base. You gotta maintain all that stuff, right? And then the next customer comes, and then it like kind of starts to escalate at some point. And if that is not scary enough, this is what AI does when you feed it with that prompt. I think that's super scary. That is not a product. That's projects. And it's even worse because that's projects on top of a product setup. And let me just visualize that for you a bit, how that feels, right? That is what we call project stacking. So first customer, beautiful baby, project number 1. Then you grow via projects like arm, eye, another arm, right? And then after some time, the organization kind of feels, right, we don't really build a product here. It's like we don't even have like a roadmap, but like a lot of project plans, deadlines, Gantt charts, like everything that we hate in product, right? And then you grow a little more with another project, and maybe it kind of works out, and then at some point, the engineering team will complain. It's just like, oh, we get buried in technical debt because we have all these exceptions in here. And then you do another one, and then it just explodes. At some point, it will just explode. It might not happen at the 7th project, it might happen earlier, it might happen later, but at some point, it will explode. And this is actually what a CEO of a company who was going through that explained to us. We used to deliver more value, it feels like that, with 10 people than we do now with 100. And this is how it really feels like when you're stuck in that. And the challenges attached to it are actually quite interesting because a lot of people look into engineering and say, how can we optimize that? But the issue is that it starts at the very beginning with segmentation. And the problem is that there's often like wrong or actually no segmentation at all. So companies, especially in the beginning, it's a lot of opportunistic sales when you launch like a new product, right? Especially in the B2B space, because you are not like be able to serve 1 million customers. We heard that from Julia just earlier. So you are selling to too many different segments too early. Different verticals like automotive, pharma, maybe also different company sizes, corporate, SME, startups. And then you get like this big variance in requirements that essentially leads to a lot of exceptions like we just saw before in your product and your code. And then you increase the maintenance effort because, I mean, it's not a project, right? So you need to kind of maintain all these different variances that you have in the product. And they kind of, like the exceptions increase kind of exponentially. So if you have 4 exceptions, that's 4 times 4 things that can go wrong. And then at some point you would get stuck that you actually have no capacity left to build actual product value. The second challenge is pricing. Also might be a little interesting, but the thing about pricing is that if you're working in a project setup, these companies are typically used to doing like project pricing. And maybe they have with the product adapted like a SaaS business model where they have like, I don't know, licenses or like value-based things, right? But what they do when customers approach them with like a feature request, like a customized solution for them, they actually do project pricing, which means time and material, and maybe they're smart and put a margin on top for like maintenance later, 20, 30%, right? That is not enough, by the way. We have seen companies where the effort increased times 50 from what they actually estimated in the first place because of maintenance and also because you have so many things going on in your code after a while because of different customer requests, right? So the feature for single customers are priced like project work. And when you get that, you fairly often realize during development that the effort increases. Because again, it's not greenfield, you already have a product out there, right? And then you kind of start building these exceptions for clients, also sometimes in a weird way, because I mean, you gotta ship it out, there's a deadline, and then weird things like if client ID equals 5 happens in the code. All the developers in the crowd can probably relate. I've never done that, by the way. Never. And that, again, leads to increased maintenance effort, and then you will see that a lot on these slides today. So there's no capacity left to actually build a product or deliver any product value at all. Maybe on the 4th slide, we can do like a repeat after me, no product value, because you will see that all the time now. So let's talk about the root cause, the second story. The customer is king, or maybe queen. And that is also a bit weird, isn't it? Because, I mean, in product, we strive to be customer-centric, but the challenge is that in these setups, we listen too much to the customer. Actually, project organizations, they would say of themselves that they are super customer-centric, and they are for single customers, but not for many. So we have these kings and queens, so let's build them a castle. And as you can already see, it's 3 very different castles. So I don't want to spoil the story, but that's why I'm going with that, right? So let's say you have a king, a queen, and another king or a queen, and they want 3 different things. They actually say, I love your baby, or like the castle that you have built. The one wants a tower, the other one wants a castle ditch, and the third one, they want a gate. And then what typically happens is that sales is kind of trying to probably prioritize by the biggest customer, or I don't know, by deadline. It doesn't really matter. So let's say the tower wins and they prioritize it. Tower, castle ditch, no, tower, gate, castle ditch, that way. And then that is kind of given into product. And I say product in big quotations because it's not actually product, because what they typically do is that they just like hand through the requirements to engineering. So they are basically requirements managers, right? So you see a lot, even if their title is something like product owner, you see a lot that they are not actually doing product work. And then the designers and engineers, they just build, build, build. All right, so what if this happens? All of a sudden, deadline is approaching. Crap, we have to ship. Actually, we have like a contract with that customers, and we have to ship that castle ditch by Friday. So it's not great because we have been working on the tower. Like, it's nearly ready. But then sales is like, fuck, we have a clause in the contract. We actually have to pay a lot of money if we don't deliver that by Friday. So they go to product and they say, okay, damn it, let's reprioritize. And then engineering is usually like, what the hell? We nearly finished that. It's nearly ready for shipping, and now we got to switch context, and what do we do with the code? It's like, oh my God, right? And this is not product management. This is actually not even great project management if you think about it. And the reason is, it's actually not about the people, it's also not about sales, it's not about product or project management, but it's just really hard in this kind of hybrid setup to do either one of these properly. And then it often feels like you're just like kind of fighting, like the whole house is on fire, and you have like this small hose, and you're trying to like put out like the fires that come like super close to you. It's not great. I'm telling you, it's not great. So let's look at how it should actually work. And I mean, Julia already kind of spoiled that, but I'm going to show it to you anyway, right? So if customers approach you with feature requests, literally our jobs is to find out what the problem is. And maybe in this honestly super simple example, I know in the real world it's a lot more complex, right? But the problem might be the customers just want a secured castle. And then ideally also like product and design and engineering, they're not like separate silos, but they actually work together as a proper product team. And then they think about a solution that not in their wildest dreams the customers could have come up with. Wow. A gate with face recognition. Ultimate security. Way better than a tower, way better than a castle ditch, even better than the gate. That's crazy. We can do access management. Awesome. That is something the engineering team will be super happy about. And then ideally they talk to sales, or with sales, and we've heard it before. Discovery is obviously a company effort, but I have simplified it a bit just to make a point. So, and then sales is ideally able to go out and sell a standardized solution, because all of a sudden they can serve all these 3 customers with the same feature, so there's a high likeliness they will be able to serve more customers with that feature. And ideally, everybody is happy, everybody wins. Ideally. So, that is what we call discovery. So that is also challenge 3, discovery. In project organizations, discovery is kind of outsourced to the customer. And then the customer kind of dictates the solution, and we know that customers are notoriously bad at designing solutions. What they're actually good at is knowing about the problem. That's the space they own. And then since the customer dictates the solution, there's often the problem that the problem is not really understood within the organization, and then also the solutions do not get validated. And then these solutions kind of work for one customer only, but they don't work for a lot of customers. And then you kind of get this increased maintenance effort again because of all like the different solutions, and you can guess what is coming next. No, okay, let's try that again. You can guess what is coming next. Yeah, okay, let's do no product value. Shall we try that once? Okay. What is coming next? Good. Oh, I love that. Thank you. All right, let's talk about the fourth challenge, which is prioritization. And prioritization in these companies is fairly often done by deadline pressure, because you have all these projects stacking up, and they grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you actually have to start kind of prioritize by deadlines, because, I mean, there is a contract, you have to deliver at some point, right? And this is actually the reason for it, which is kind of weird, and I think Pavel will also talk about this in the afternoon, about like product strategy. But in organizations that have a hard time prioritizing, most often than not, it's not about like the fancy frameworks they use, like RISE, Moscow, or whatever, but it's more about that there is no coherent strategy that the teams can just like orient themselves on, right? So they look at it and it's like, I have no idea what's more important. And especially if you have different projects, I don't know what's important. And then usually prioritization is kind of done by the biggest customer or deadlines or the one who's screaming the loudest. I guess also this is something that the B2B people in the audience can kind of relate to. And then the next items that you work on are usually not the ones that are important, at least not in the long run. They're the ones that are super urgent, like the house is on fire, you gotta push them out like on Friday. Releasing on Friday, always a good idea. And then the teams are working on the urgent things, not the most important topics. Most of the times there's actually no time left to do the important topics. And then we end up where? Exactly. It's like there's no capacity left to actually do anything about it. So let's talk about the obvious here for a moment. Organizational dysfunctions. And like a huge disclaimer before we get into that. This is not about blaming sales. This is not about blaming the people who are doing product at these companies. It's not about blaming anyone for it, because the truth is, this is an organizational issue. This is not a sales issue, a product issue, a management issue. This is an organizational issue. And I want to look at two things here. And the one is communication flow. So how does that look like in a project setup? Left to right. So there's usually no proper interaction between like the different functions, but it's just getting pushed down from the customer right into engineering. And a lot of times, to be honest, like also like sales skips product if it's like super urgent or like some other weird stuff happens. And when we look at this product setup, that should obviously look a little different, right? So you should have like the whole product team talking to customers. It's only one error, but like they obviously should talk to more customers than one, right? And then also like product and sales, and I know also very simplified, one arrow to the right direction, they should also be in touch, right? So the whole organization should be able to kind of collect these findings, right? That help product to figure out what they actually need to build. And then there should be like a standardized offer towards the customer in order to make it scalable. The second thing I want to talk about is the filter, because this also looks very different in project organizations than in product organizations. In project organizations, how it works, because obviously usually you are kind of in this time and material mindset. So how do you earn more money? More customers, or you just try to sell them more. So if someone comes to you and says like, you want a tower? You know what? Let's make it a tower with like an astronomy tower on top. We don't really have that yet, But I mean, that would like increase the revenue dramatically because we can actually sell more. And that's fair. In pure project organizations, that's how it goes, right? I mean, McKinsey has this infamous saying, land and expand, right? And this is what it is. You land the contract, then you expand it, you upsell it, but not in a standardized manner. And then there's also no filter in product, and then this whole bunch of stuff just kind of gets pushed down to engineering, and they're just like... So there's no filter at all. Actually, project organizations in a conventional project setup, they don't really need a filter. It's not really necessary. Customer just has to pay more. But like in this hybrid setup, or if you're moving from project to product, you actually need it. So let's talk about how this should look in a product organization, because that's actually very different. What it should look like is that basically when the customer approaches you with like a solution that you want, sales should be able to kind of navigate that down to something that you already have. And then if it's even like some requests that are coming in through customers that are new and you figure out, okay, there's like 10, 15 customers out there, maybe more that want it, also product should kind of be able to, through discovery, to filter some things out. And then ideally, what kind of reaches engineering is sizable for them, you can work on it, right? You can maybe do like a smaller iteration at first. So all these things that actually make this kind of filter work in a product organization. So, challenge number 5 is actually product organization. So not really big of a surprise here. So the problem is that product management typically does kind of project management. And it's, again, the product people are usually not to blame for that. And since there's no proper product organization in place, what typically happens is that stakeholders like sales kind of skip product. They start skipping product quite a lot and put work in the engineering backlogs. Or even if they don't skip product, product is often not equipped to do like a proper discovery on things. We had that before. And they still end up kind of unfiltered in the backlogs. And then product is really not able to do a proper discovery because how should they? They can't do like a proper prioritization. They can't do roadmap, like all the things we are supposed to be doing. And then again, teams are working on the urgent things because they're kind of prioritized like left to right or top down. And we end up with, I can already see people want lunch. It's like kind of unexcited but at this point. Can we have that again? What do we have? Okay, that's better. Can't blame you, I'm super hungry as well. So, last one, promise. I promised you 8, but this is actually the last one I'm going to talk about today. So challenge 6 is push versus pull. And the problem is here that product teams get pushed to do work instead of pulling what they can manage. And it's a quite common thing, right? So organizations are actually not really aware what they like how much they can handle in a certain amount of time, and because of these changing priorities, they kind of have this thing that work gets actually pushed down, top down, or like left to right, if you want to look at it from the funnel perspective, and then that the changing priorities make it really hard for them to deliver on time or even any value at all. And then what typically happens at some point is that blame gets put on the product team. You're not delivering, you don't hold deadlines, what the hell is going on, right? And I can't blame people for it, product teams get like disengaged because they get blamed for anything anyways. And the issue is in that setup that they cannot really do anything about it as well. And now that's the only one that's different. So you always get no product value, but like in this case, there's actually also no incentive for product people to generate any product value. Because I mean, they're gonna get blamed for it anyways if it's not like delivered on time in that fancy Gantt chart that is in the contract. So how do you solve this? So I promise you, I'm gonna be talking a lot about the problem. So how do you solve this? Well, the bad news is, as a product manager, you can't. Aww. The good news is, as an organization, you actually can. And let's talk about that for a minute. The first step, and that is why I was talking so intensely about the problem today, the first step is awareness. Because a lot of people are actually not really aware what the root cause of all the symptoms are that they see on a daily basis. So a lot of people are not aware that it's about segmentation and pricing potentially. They might be a little more aware, at least in the product space, that it's about discovery and prioritization, but not everybody in the company is a product person, right? And that's exactly the reason why I talked about the problem so much today, because awareness is the first step, and it's an important step. Because if you're not aware, you cannot spot these little things, because you will always look at the symptom. For instance, engineering is not delivering, but maybe the root cause of the symptom is that at the beginning of the funnel, sales is selling to too many different segments. So you need your whole organization to actually do that. And this is how we think about this, right? So you got segmentation, pricing at the beginning, discovery, prioritization, push-pull, and we also talked about a bit. So I made it yellow because I think we haven't properly talked about it. So I think Marty will do a way better job later to talk about this. What we haven't actually touched is platform strategy and output. So if you're interested in that, we can definitely also talk in the break. And when you look at this, what you will realize, I mean, obviously, like kind of the CEO is kind of in charge of everything, but like these different things are actually usually owned by different people in the company. So for instance, there's the chief sales officer or the CMO or whatever who is owning segmentation and pricing, maybe even also the CPO, right? And then there's also obviously engineering who needs to be on board. And I put the leadership functions here for a reason, because it starts with leadership. There has to be a conscious decision on a leadership level that you want to change something about the way you are currently working. And these problems, they are all interconnected, and that makes it so hard to solve them, and that makes it impossible to solve them either within product or engineering or sales or like on a pure CEO level. So the top-down challenge here is company-wide awareness and alignment. And this is something that leadership is responsible for. They have to repeat this again and again and again. And in order to do so, and this is kind of a screwed up visual that I have here, that kind of shows how we're usually approaching it. So this is basically what leadership in a company told us about how they are currently working and what they feel is currently breaking. And this is like a great way to do that, to visualize it, bring it together. So you can see probably the green ones are engineering, like right in the back. Probably the pink ones are sales, right? And then once you have that, and that's already a super hard task, right? Because you got to repeat, you got to get people on board. There's also the bottom-up challenge. And that is, it's not only in product, but it's especially in product. Like, it's our responsibility in product to take serious responsibility for discovery, prioritization, road mapping, all these product practices that you need in order to make this work. And also this doesn't happen overnight, right? Especially if you have kind of a project set up and you have kind of product owners that are rather project managers, or you don't really have product practices in place. And I mean, you can do that in a lot of ways, right? So you could hire people from outside who have seen how product really needs to work. You can educate your product managers and really teach them how to adapt these product practices, right? You could go to conferences like this one, or like hire external consultants to kind of instill it into your organization. But this is definitely something that needs to happen. So, in closing, if you want to learn more, we have actually written a book about this. Which is going to be released at the end of the year, and we will be describing like the challenges and also the solutions in a lot more detail than I could have done today. If you want to get early access to the book, because we are still looking also for feedback, because we want to make sure that it's as actionable as possible, so that you can basically run the process that, that we are running with companies also on your own, in your own company. So, thank you so much. You have been so kind, also like doing this no product value thing with me. I know it's a little bit cheesy, but you know, when you're on stage, that's actually quite nice. So, thank you so much.
Great. Yeah. Come here, Sebastian. Thank you very much. We have a couple of questions. So the first one is how to avoid opportunistic behavior by the management sales saying yes to every feature requests for the first first three customers just to get the deals.
Oh, you can't. So the thing is, especially in the beginning, it's not bad to start with projects, because the thing is, if you're not venture funded, and that's getting increasingly harder, if you're not venture funded and you have a long runway, like 3 or 4 years to figure this out, then you probably will start with a project. And then you will probably put another project on top. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if you start like that, because you also learn a lot about the market, the segments. And if you really have to bring in the revenue, then I would say just go for it. You just need to find this spot. And this is a little different for every company, where you need to kind of like turn it around and say, all right, that's it, it's good. Like this building projects has brought us so far, and we have a lot of clients that were like super successful on their first 5, 6, 7 projects, and then all of a sudden it started breaking. And that's the thing. I mean, what I'm saying is like it's not a bad thing necessarily to start with projects if you're successful with it. But at some point, if you want that scalability, then you kind of need to change something.
All right, there's another question. Yeah, how can you escape? So this is what was the very beginning, right? Yeah. The next question is more towards the end. Yeah, how can you actually escape the spiral of stacking projects on top of another project, especially when it feels it's close to the exploding? So,
yeah, awareness. So I mean, this talk is recorded. So spread the talk, because here's the thing. If you're not aware of something, then you don't know what you want, right? So, I mean, let's say, if I'm not aware that I'm eating unhealthy, there's no way on earth that I will be able to change something about it. And this is the first step. And it's crucial, like, that you have basically a leadership that is very aware and is aware of the issues also in the organization, so that they are actually willing to change. Because let's face it, if leadership is not on board for these things, that won't succeed. I mean, you can try as hard as you want to change something on the operational level, like maybe start with a little product discovery here and there. Yes, that's good. That's really good. But you will never, never, never do this like 180-degree handbrake move to turn it around. So the first thing, and you can help your leadership with that if they are open with it. The first thing, so really quickly, do interviews with every leadership function. So as product managers, we should be good doing that. Like, treat them like customer interviews and map out like the different things that they are saying about like the funnel, from sales through product to engineering. And then you basically, after you've done that, you kind of consolidate all these interviews and show them, okay, this is where it breaks. Because everybody has a different perspective on it. And when you really bring them together, then you might actually as well identify the 8 challenges that we have identified, because they are quite universal, actually.
All right, one more question. Why do you think, it's basically asking, why are you here anyway? So why do you think PM sitting here have direct influence for such a shift in the whole organization, even if they see those dysfunctions?
Okay. I have to think about that for a bit, because I don't want to say anything wrong here. Okay, so who in the audience actually has leadership responsibility in their company? So these are the people probably to talk first. So, okay, hard fact. If you are working in a company that is not willing to change, write me a message. I can connect you with a lot of companies that actually work in a way where it's fun to work as a PM. Because, yeah, but you have to understand that if the company is not willing to change, They will not. And you can fight it as hard as you want. And we've seen it countless times also in the Product Masterclass, that people who really go out and they want to fight in their organization, sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. But don't invest 5 years to change that. Because to be honest, when you start fighting and they don't want the change, they also don't want you. You are an annoyance that you are fighting it. So then, literally, look for a different job. I mean, it's that's the best advice I can give you, because you will never, never change that without buy-in from leadership.
All right. Well, thank you, Sebastian. Big applause
Thank you so
for him.
much.
And here is your Big Little Things box.